The Rodgers announcement is official at this time. Torn Achilles. There's a Super Bowl MVP right now on the streets. Future Hall of Fame quarterback. Tom Brady. They have to give him a call, right?
Welcome back to the Second and Short podcast. I'm Josiah.
Chiefs, what happened? I'm Christian.
I'm Hayden.
I'm Eli.
And again, we call this the Second and Short podcast because in football, whenever you're on second and short, the entire playbook is open. You could run it, you could pass it, you could take a shot. The defense isn't really going to know what's happening. And so you go in a whole bunch of different directions. And that's kind of the idea that we're bringing into it is like, 1 week we could be talking about something and the next week we'll talk about something completely different.
Yeah, before we get into our week one recap where we look at a few interesting games specifically, just a refresh on how we did in week one with our game picks that you can find on our Instagram. Hayden led the way. He went 10-6. Christian and I were in second at 9-7. Josiah and Kelsey were 8-8. And Luke off camera was 7-9. One thing to point out is that all four of us agreed on all six of us agreed on 4 specific games, and we did go 4-0 in those games. So maybe some of the easier games that we all agreed on, but we were all right. So just something to point out in the future. However, there were a couple games that only one person disagreed with, and they did very well when they were the lone one. One of them being Christian with the Lions and the Chiefs.
They didn't get their cheeseburgers today. Andy Reid not getting any fatter. All right, so the Chiefs game, I called it. Y'all suck. The defense is way better than the offense without Kelsey, too. And I think with Kelsey, they're going to be the same way with no receivers at all. And it was just a fun game watching Dan Campbell bite their kneecaps off. I was a fan, and I think all you were for the Super Bowl champs to go down like that to the Lions.
No, it was fun. I disagreed with you, but I'm still kind of happy it happened at the same time. I love Dan Campbell. A couple of those ballsy plays, ballsy calls paid off. And
where do I have it on here?
Yeah, Christian has a whole outfit, if you can't tell.
I got somewhere on here.
Has a lion chain.
Got
everything.
some balls.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that I was surprised by just how bad the receivers were for Kansas City. How many drops they had. It was bad. Like in the past, they haven't necessarily needed a receiver one outside of Kelsey, but like looking at it this year, it's like they got to change something. We talked about a young guy, Justin Ross, who may have potentially broken out, like got just a couple snaps and only got one target. And so they need to figure something out.
And before Isaiah Pacheco got hurt, they didn't even use him. They barely used him, which made me mad for my fantasy team. But.
All right, but how concerned are we really? Like, it's still Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelsey, Chris Jones just signed. Like, they're
Makes
the
their
Chiefs.
defense
Like,
better.
are we really that worried about it? Like,
No,
throw and catch.
I think they make the playoffs still, but defense is better than offense.
quote
yeah, and if
Giselle
you let
Bundchen,
Mahomes in the playoffs, though, like,
to quote
come on
Giselle
now.
Bundchen, Tom Brady can't throw the ball and make the catches.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes can't throw the ball and make the catches there.
I'm still, it's week one. There's going to be some overreactions later. And I think counting the Chiefs out, like, as long as you can get into the tournament, any of those 7 teams can do anything.
before we get too far into talking about the Chiefs, though, I want to talk about the Lions too and pick out some things. Obviously, credit to them for winning. Talking a lot about the Chiefs and how disappointing it was, but give credit to the Lions as well. But one thing Jahmyr Gibbs looked electric. And do you think they're just kind of easing him into it?
Well, Dan Campbell actually just said that, I think today or yesterday, he said that he was like waiting for him to see like the atmosphere and get used to it. And then he said week 2, he's getting a lot more now.
And I may be biased because he's on like 5 of my 6 fantasy teams, but they need to incorporate him more. David Montgomery showed that he can carry the ball, but Gibbs is just truly the only person until Jameson Williams comes back that's special on that offense. So they need to showcase that.
Yeah, David Montgomery didn't have a bad game by any means, but just whenever, you could tell the Chiefs had to zero in on Jahmyr Gibbs, and he looked electric, very fast, obviously. And it was confusing watching the game, but it makes sense if they're just going to ease him into it. But it was a little concerning for me that he didn't get some more touches.
What was weird too is that when they didn't use him, it was when they were struggling in the second half, because truth be told, Lions offense didn't really do much except for in the first half. It was all their defense, and their defense basically carried them because they really only scored 14 points, and defense got the other points with the pick 6.
That fake punt is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that was smart.
like early on in the game, obviously the game changing moment, even though it was so early on, and you never know what's going to happen if they
expected them
punt
to
the
go
ball.
on 4th and short in the first drive when they were like in like the goal, like red zone, and they didn't go for it, and they go on their like own 15 instead.
I assume you guys all saw that picture because I'm sure everybody saw it, but you were talking about like the pick six. It's like that picture of where Tony had his hands, both of them, on the ball. And it's like this turned into pick six. It's like,
Does he have a future at this point? Like, he had a couple nice plays in the Super Bowl where we kind of like forgot about any bust talk, and then that was a terrible showing.
he took on, I don't know if you guys saw this, he took onto his social media on like Instagram. Some was like clowning the Giants when they lost 40-0. It's like, yeah, it's garbage that they lost 40-0, but like you're the person who's
Yeah.
going to try to clown them after
He
your performance. on
deactivated
Thursday?
his Twitter 3 days earlier, and then now he's clowning people on Instagram. Just the talent there. Like, he's so good with the ball in his
He's
hands,
open, dude.
but
His
if
route
he can't
running
get the
is
ball
very
in his
good.
hands, then it doesn't matter.
On a different point, I personally agreed with it, but what did you guys think about that Chiefs 4th down call near the end of the game on 4th and
No.
25?
I'll
So
let you
Did
guys
they-
go first, because I actually agree with it completely.
They all had their didn't they have all their 3 times?
I think
And a
they
2-minute warning. too.
Yeah, they had their 2-minute warning. I think even if they didn't have their 3 timeouts, or they had 2, they still had the 2-minute warning, which is another timeout. I think I would have had faith more in their defense because their defense was playing good the whole game.
Josie, do you agree with it?
It's difficult to say, but I think based on the game itself, I disagree with it. When you have Mahomes in there, it's hard to disagree with the fact that like, oh, they could pick up a 4th and 25, but the entire atmosphere of the game was drop passes. So you can't expect them to make a catch in that situation. Like if I'm the coach, I'm like, okay, this is what's been happening the entire game. Like I'm not going to expect them to make a catch on 4th and 25 with their backs against the wall when they haven't made a catch all
Well,
game.
and also I agree with it before they got the penalty that made it 4th and 20. I didn't agree after that. But also the last 2 passes, Mahomes didn't throw really good passes to them. Like they were in the defensive hands and they almost like let the Chiefs catch it because the first one was to Rashee Rice, and then he was still open. Like after it went through Gardner Johnson's hands, he almost had it still, but he couldn't stop himself from running. And then the other one, Sky Moore, I think it was, and Sky Moore almost had a chance to get it, but he wasn't there in time.
Yeah, I actually agree with it. And I don't know where you stand,
No, I'm
Eli.
with you.
Like, you have Patrick Mahomes, so I don't care if it's 4th in any distance. So I already think I'm pretty confident that Patrick Mahomes is going to get it, even with garbage receivers. Then if you don't get it, even if Detroit gets a field goal, all you have to do is stop them. You're still getting the ball back. You have 3 timeouts. You have the 2-minute warning. Even if they kick a field goal, you're still in the game and you have Patrick Mahomes. I had no problem with it. Obviously, the Chiefs defense that Christian's been raving about couldn't stop Detroit. They end up running out the clock, but I was fine with the play call. Obviously, it's going to get hate on because it didn't work for the Chiefs, but I actually agree with Andy Reid on it.
Okay, it was one drive of the game, and they were on the field like the whole time, like the Steelers defense. I don't want to hear
So
it.
legit question, is Patrick Mahomes undefeated in overtime? I'm pretty sure.
No,
as far as I
because
can
you know
remember-
what, the first game that just popped into my mind,
Patriots.
the AFC Championship game from his first year starting at Arrowhead, where Tom Brady led them down the field and Rex Burkhead finished it off of a
Because they
touchdown.
also had the
Okay.
pick.
Was that offsides call?
Yeah.
the offside
With D Ford, yeah.
Okay.
Way
So I
off.
mean, he has one loss that we can remember in OT. Is like Patrick Mahomes wins the game in OT. Like
Yeah, I think
On 4th and
he's done
25
it to Buffalo the past.
exactly. It's like he only needs 13 seconds to go down the field. So like in that scenario, I trust him in OT more than I trust him and the receivers to pick up a 4th and 25.
I don't know, but even the 4th down was there though. Like it's in
was,
Tony's
yeah.
hand. Like
Yeah.
that's how ridiculous Patrick Mahomes is. Where I think that they'll be able to fix it is because even with how bad they played, they still almost beat a really good football team. They were just one bad luck away.
Yeah.
They were that close.
No, I agree with you on them going for it. And my take isn't even that I'm confident Mahomes is going to get it. I still think they have like a 5% chance of getting it, honestly. But at the same time, I think when you explained your second part with they're still going to have to get a stop either way. If they're going to have to get in your guys' case, they're going to have to get a good punt where it's like inside their 20. Because if not, the Lions are just going to reverse field and the Chiefs are going to have a huge way to go. Whereas even if the Lions, let's say they went 3 and out, and then they ended up kicking a field goal, you know you're getting it at the 25-yard line, or maybe the Lions squib it and you get it at the 20 or 30. I think that's a better chance than, you never know if you're going to get pinned back if you do punt it away and the Lions then reverse the field back. But yeah.
Anything else that we want to say about this? Christian, do you want to just enjoy it a little bit longer? Or?
Ask,
It's
brother.
going to stay the whole time.
Yeah, I'm sure it will come up later on.
Yeah.
It's going to happen again.
The game that I want to talk about is the Monday night game that we all saw yesterday. Bills, Jets, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, 3 plays like that. I saw somewhere that might be the most devastating sports injury of all time. And for a city, it might be. Like, the pregame was so amazing with the 9/11 ceremonies and the flag being ran out onto field by him. And then 3 plays. And then he actually stands up after he gets sacked. And then he just falls down.
You could tell he was like communicating with the offensive coordinator. He was like mouthing some words to the sideline, and then he just fell.
And then I don't know if you guys saw Peyton Manning's reaction on the Manning cast, but that was truly the whole world's reaction. Everyone was just like, are you kidding me? Like, whether you wanted Rodgers to succeed, whether you wanted him to fail, like, everyone was just kind of in disbelief. Like, okay, what happens now? Because for a team that has a ton of Super Bowl hype, we still have another like 5 primetime games with them.
Yeah.
Someone was saying like this is just going to be the Broncos all over again
exactly.
from last year.
Like, and I remember watching Russell Wilson and the Broncos last year and cheering aggressively against them just because I was so sick of it. But it wasn't even fun to watch and cheer against them because it was just boring football. I'm scared the Jets could end up like that. I have a little bit of a overreaction / hot take for you guys later, but I really want to. Christian's going to talk about how he was right about the Chiefs so far. I'm going to talk about how I was right about the Bills so far because Josh Allen looked terrible. 4 turnovers, kind of his own version of a butt fumble.
Yeah.
Fumbled running into his own guy. 3 picks to Jordan Whitehead. Hail to Pitt. I mean,
yeah, they had a great weekend.
All right. Well, this isn't a college podcast.
Don't bring it up.
But. And then Stephon Diggs, it's just a matter of time before he gets unhappy. They lost to...
He's already unhappy.
Yeah, they lost to a Jets team that couldn't move the ball until the last couple minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And I think it was John Perry, who's the rules analyst for ESPN. He was trying to say that there was a missed tripping call on the punt return touchdown from Gibson. That's ludicrous. That's so ticky-tacky. I don't even like that he threw it out there for Bills fans to look at. But Bills, like... As Christian said, what happened? Like, that's a game that they honestly should have won even if Rodgers finishes. Rodgers plays 3 snaps and they still lose. Like, that's ridiculous. And the run game for the Jets is something that I think could kind of carry them. Dalvin Cook didn't look great, but he also had some missed blocks there's something there. He still has it as expected. Breece Hall, like, good God, he can run. Like, that was ridiculous. Like, the fact it's so rare in 2023 to have a running back who can take any play to the house. Dalvin Cook was one of them, which is why Minnesota shouldn't have got rid of him. But Breece Hall on 7 carries had over 110 yards.
Yeah. And Michael Carter's not bad either. Like, people forget because they took Breece Hall the year right after, but like Michael Carter is a very good receiving back. So they have 3 guys who are like viable.
4. Izzy Abanikanda, the rookie from Pitt.
Yeah.
So
one thing I will say about the Jets, if Breece didn't get hurt last year, I would see them making the playoffs because they just gave him the workload and he made it happen for them.
Yeah, the
Their game
offense
looked so much
disappeared
better.
after he tore his ACL. And that's the Rodgers announcement is official at this time, torn Achilles. I think Zach Wilson isn't a starting quarterback, and we'll talk more about that later. But also, his leadership has improved now where the team can at least rally around him. Last year after the loss to the Patriots, that's when you started to see Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner kind of turn against him. And that's when we thought it was over. Zach Wilson's skills as a quarterback might not have improved, but his personality has improved enough where the locker room doesn't hate him anymore, I think. But then adding on to that, I mean, torn Achilles for Rodgers. Is he done? Is he coming back?
I think he comes back.
I mean, I think he contemplates retirement again. Is he going to go and do like a darkness retreat again? Probably not. I mean, who knows? But like, I think he probably considers it again and kind
For
of like
all the
sees
talk
where
he's
he's
been
at.
talking about, like how many years he wants to play, I think he will play at least 1 more year after the injury.
You don't think he'll want to end like this?
No way. Aaron Rodgers is one of the cockiest guys out there. You think he wants to end on a torn Achilles?
But at the same time, Aaron he marches to the beat of his own drum. So like if he hears the media talking about like, oh, he's going to retire. He's going to that. Like, there's a chance he won't retire.
Yeah.
But like,
He's going to do the opposite of whatever ESPN says. So
honestly, he hates the media so much that like he would literally like
Schefter's going to text
rehab
him again
and,
this
like,
offseason. He's going to say, lose my number.
He would have surgery. He would rehab. He would come back next year just to do the opposite of what like ESPN says.
Here's food for thought. So Brett Favre in 2007 was traded to the Jets. He had a subpar year there. They just missed the playoffs. He retires again and ends up in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins, contract year in Minnesota, didn't have the best opener against Tampa Bay. Let's say they move on. The Jets, they want to move on also. Is it possible that we're talking about Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell next year?
No way.
I would say it's
that'd be wild.
extremely unlikely.
I mean, you also got to say that like Brett Favre, there was also some controversy around him sending those text messages to that girl with the Jets. Like, it wasn't just that he like left and retired. Like, he was forced out a little bit because of the whole controversy.
But what if the Jets have a successful season this year with Zach Wilson or without whoever comes in or doesn't come in at quarterback? Then, I mean, they're not going to want to, like, if Zach Wilson all of a sudden wins the Super Bowl, I don't know if the Jets are going to be, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are going to be like, hey, like Rodgers, come on back. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's week one. Like, anything we say on this podcast, this is bad for business, but like, it's irrelevant. It's week one. Like, we're overreacting to everything, but it's just something to keep in the back of your brain. But then, Josie, you want to kick it off with the Chargers Dolphins?
Absolutely. Yeah, probably the most exciting as far as scoring and like offensive game of the week. The Dolphins and the Chargers. It was 35-32. Am I remembering that right?
36-34.
Yes, you're right. Yes, I'm sorry. 36-34. Good game for somebody who likes to watch offensive games, which a lot of people do, especially with fantasy aspect of it. Start with the Chargers. So crazy stat for you. I heard this on, I think it was one of the McCourty twins said this like yesterday or today or something like that. The Chargers in the last 3 games have put up 92 points. And they're 0-3 in the last 3 games that they played. The issue is not the offense. The issue is how bad their defense plays, specifically at end of game situations. I would argue that their offense plays a little bit iffy near the end of games too, but their defense is an issue. They have talented guys at every level. They brought in Eric Kendricks. They have 2 good pass rushers. We talked about this in the AFC overview that we had. They have Derwin James, who a lot of people think is the best safety in the NFL. It's like they have guys. That's not the issue. The issue is that they I don't know what the issue is. They're bad. Like, they're just bad.
They're cursed.
Yeah, no sacks. 0 sacks in that game against a pretty good Dolphins line
there. Yeah, they didn't even have their best guy though too.
Yeah, I mean an okay line, not great by any means. 0 sacks, only 3 tackles for loss in the entire game. They had Joey Bosa had 1 tackle, and that's the only stat he registered. Khalil Mack had 2 tackles, and that's the only stat he registered. Then you look at Derwin James, he had 6 tackles and a tackle for loss. Like, that's not a bad stat line, but not for the best safety in the league. And then I was looking at the cap, because obviously everybody's talking about JC Jackson and how bad he played. The cap situation there with the Chargers, it's like the top 3 cap hitters for this year are JC Jackson, Khalil Mack, and Joey Bosa. The thing about cap hits is you can justify as long as those guys are producing. Those guys are not producing. Between the 3 of them, they account for over 1/5 of the entire cap on that team, and they're not doing anything basically. So obviously the players need to play a lot better. And another thing, like, you have to make adjustments. When a guy can put up 215 yards receiving on you, you have to stop him. Regardless of what you have to do to stop him, you have to. Obviously, their game plan in Miami was to go to Tyreek Hill, and the Chargers did basically nothing to stop it. Eli Apple was in that game, and he wasn't the burnt toast corner. It was JC Jackson. JC Jackson was the worst corner in that game. And it was by a substantial margin. So you have to do something to stop the guy. You have to double cover Tyreek, shade a safety over, do something, and cut your losses with Jalen Waddle, who's also going to torch you then at that point. But don't let them go to Tyreek Hill, and they didn't make any adjustments on
And
that.
Tyreek honestly left some out there to be had. Like Tua missed a cut. Like Tua, it's realistic to think Tua could have broke the passing game record for yards, and then Tyreek could have broke the receiving yards
Yeah.
record.
Absolutely. I mean, 466, right?
Yeah.
3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Like that. I mean,
Y'all can say whatever you want what Tyreek said about Patrick Mahomes and everything, but him and Tua together are nice.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
they
a good.
complement each other so much.
Yeah.
Tyreek saved like Tua's career, I feel like, when he got there.
I mean, that's fair. It doesn't help. It helps having Jalen Waddle and Mike McDaniel also, but I mean, yeah.
I mean, he's got to be one of the top targeted guys since coming to Miami. I mean, he was a top targeted guy when he was at the Chiefs
Yeah.
too. But I mean, that's as good of a transition as any to Miami. Honestly, like, I mean, Miami played a near flawless game. Like, obviously, there's things to improve on always, but they played a really good game, especially near the end when they needed to. I do think a part of that, and I'll talk about this a little bit, is like, you know, the system that they're in. I think Mike McDaniels is a great coach at this point. Like, he's borderline those top guys moving into that category, I think.
Who are those top guys?
I mean, when you're talking about the guys who right now are those top guys, probably like Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid. I mean, Mike Tomlin's consistency. I mean, just to name a few. Those are
Sean
the guys. I mean,
Payton.
is there anybody you guys would add?
Sean Payton.
Sean Payton,
offensive
yeah, fair.
mind.
Not McVay.
I think so. I think that one bad
I'm
year
just
doesn't
trying.
define-
He's for
yeah.
sure top 10, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think he's top 10.
Do you think he's pushing top 5? I don't think yet.
I think he's 5 to 7. I think he's
I feel
somewhere in
like
that
if he
area.
had like nothing going against the Rams GM for like him doing all those trades and like giving up a ton of money for it, like it paid off for a Super Bowl win. But if he had like those coaches GMs, I feel like McVay's up there because they would be smarter with their money and bring in more guys.
Speaking of GMs, Tom Telesco has been there a long time, and he'll get saved, I think, because of the drafting of Herbert. But I mean, how long until like? There's been something off with the culture there through multiple head coaches. Like you have your quarterback now. We've speculated in past episodes that Kellen Moore might actually be the guy after this season. Like I love Brandon Staley, but as a defensive mind in a talented defense, they're underperforming. How long until not only does Brandon Staley kind of get the pink slip, but also Tom Telesco kind of gets some nudge. Like
Yeah.
I was talking about Buffalo kind of having a power grab there with Brandon Beane and Sean McVay. Should there be a little bit of a power grab where Tom Telesco's getting a little bit more heat?
Maybe right now, but honestly, I'm not too concerned with the Chargers, even with what we did see with their defense in week 1. Just because what we saw in their offense mixed with a little bit of things we saw in their defense here or there. They had 234 rushing yards, and they did great stopping the Dolphins' rush game. Obviously, the Dolphins weren't too committed to the rush because they didn't have to be. I'm really not too concerned with the Chargers. Obviously, with that great rushing game to complement Herbert, they'll be able to keep possession of the ball longer when you're not playing such an explosive offense against the Dolphins. Another thing to point out is if you look at Tyreek Hill's route tree, he ran like the same exact route 5 or 6 times across the middle. And then he also ran the same type of fade route on the outside 3 or 4 times. So I think that's on the coaching. We pointed out some flaws in their defense. I think Staley will figure it out eventually. Again, I'm not too concerned with their players on defense because I think if you're getting burned on the same exact route, I think that's a coaching thing. Honestly, I don't think that's a player ability
going in the
thing.
middle too is always just hard to stay with them because
Right, especially
you
if
could
you're
run
playing
into
man against
players, like,
Tyreek.
everyone's in there, yeah, and especially Tyreek and Waddle. They're like the
Right.
fastest guys.
Yeah. So I'm not a huge Chargers lover coming into this year. Obviously, we'll talk about how much I dislike Herbert coming out of college. But honestly, even with all that said, I'm really not too concerned with the Chargers right now.
Going back to what you said with the power struggle, I feel like at that point, yes, if he's been there a while, maybe you do want to change it up. But he's bringing in the players that had great years who are great. Like he brought in Herbert, he brought in Eckler, he brought in Quinn Johnson, Mike Williams, Khalil Mack, and J.C. Jackson who had a great year.
But they're not doing anything.
That's the coaching, though. I feel like that's not.
Well, that's
him,
what I
that's
mean.
the
There should be
coaching.
a
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the GM. He's bringing in the stuff, but it should be the coaching.
I mean, to be fair, there's also I've said this for a long time, is like players coming out of the Patriots system other than Chandler Jones
yeah.
are awful.
Belichick
they're
knows when they're
terrible.
bad, yeah.
It's like they're in a great system in a great situation. I'm not saying that they're not talented. What I'm saying is coming out of there, they're basically a guaranteed bust. Other than Chandler
Trey
Jones is really the only
Jamie
one.
Collins.
Jamie Collins, yeah. I mean, you could say, oh, Stephon Gilmore, but Stephon Gilmore didn't start
from
there.
Buffalo,
Yeah,
yeah.
he came from
Yeah.
Buffalo,
He just
went there,
wanted
had
a
his
ring.
best years
Yeah, he just
with
wanted the
New
ring.
England. But yeah, players go out and they chase money and then they're bad and then they come back and they play again with the Patriots. But yeah, and as far as like the system with McDaniels, I think that he's done a really good job of instilling confidence and control with Tua. I think that was one of the big things with how much flack Tua took early in his career is that like his confidence was completely broken. And I think that McDaniels has done a great job reinstilling that confidence back in him. They're like, you can do this.
And Tua like talks about it. He's always there for him and always talking to him the whole time. Like they have a great relationship. Like the one game before he came at Alabama through the headset and they were just joking around. Like they're
Saying Georgia's the best
they
thing.
just
Yeah, that's
love each
funny.
other and they're always there for each other.
Yeah. I also think that one final thought with the Dolphins is that, like, in my opinion, arm strength with a quarterback is probably one of the most overrated things that you can judge a quarterback by. And I think that that's one of the things that Tua took a lot of flack for early in his career. Is like, oh, his arm strength's not great. It's like you have guys that can throw the ball 80 yards, but then they can't hit a wide open wide receiver. Like, I think that might have been what Tyreek was talking about in that interview last year. It's like, oh, Tua is the most accurate quarterback I've ever played with. Was he trying to take a shot at Mahomes? Who knows? But at the same time, it's like you look at what's happening. Is like when you have yak monsters like they do, you don't have to throw the ball further down the field than 25 yards. It's like Tom Brady made a living off of that.
Yep.
And it's like you don't have to be able to whip the ball 80 yards down the field in order to be a solid quarterback and have great years and potentially win a Super Bowl. So, like, I'm not saying the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl this year, but I'm saying they could be just as good as anybody in the league this year
Week, yeah.
with Tua not throwing the ball more than 40 yards down the field.
And if
Especially when
Josh
Jalen
Allen's
Ramsey
and if
comes
Josh
back,
Allen's
too.
going to turn over the ball like that, the Dolphins are going to take advantage of it, and that will help them in the
Patriots,
division as
the
well.
only thing going for the Patriots, I feel like I didn't watch the end of the game. Like they came back, but
Yeah.
I don't know how Bill O'Brien did with his first game. But I mean, Patriots defense is the only thing going for them, and then Jets.
Yeah.
They look good, and then Rodgers went
Yeah,
down.
you just never know.
Like,
what's
we
gonna
talked so
happen with
much
them.
about this AFC East being like
They just
a
went
powerhouse,
down.
and now, like, I don't want to overreact to the whole Bills thing, but like this seems to be very clearly the Dolphins division this year. Like, again, week one overreaction, but like it seems to be pretty clear. So
Well, Tua wasn't the only quarterback from his draft class to have a good game. Jordan Love also first game as the franchise quarterback, not his first game as a starter. But Eli, you want to talk about the Bears and Packers?
Yeah, so some might not think that this is the most interesting game. However, it stood out to me mainly because we thought that this could be the turning point in the Bears-Packers rivalry, and it totally wasn't. Packers have now won 9 in a row against the Bears, and that's all 9 games are under LaFleur. So LaFleur is still undefeated against the Bears, which is just ridiculous to me. I did fact check that like 3 times because I didn't believe it. However, the Bears just turned the ball over, and they just couldn't create turnovers. Aaron Jones was the leading runner and receiver for the Packers. He did come up gimpy late in the game, but should be fine going forward. I think he didn't have too many touches in the first half. However, they changed that going into the second half. So credit to LaFleur for those second half adjustments. And looking at Jones' rushing tree, just really good running in between the tackles. When you look at Love's stats, he didn't have the greatest completion percentage. However, if you take kind of like a higher level view at it, he had the 7th highest completed air yards and 5th highest intended air yards. So throwing it deeper down the field, even though he didn't end up with a ton of total yards passing, he's throwing it deep to get to his receivers. And that's even with 5 completions behind the line of scrimmage. He still had all those air yards. And then looking at Justin Fields, I'm talking a lot about passing charts. I think early in the season, it's really interesting to look at those passing charts just so you don't cherry pick from quarterback stats, see what coaches are doing. And if you look at Justin Fields' passing charts, you can just tell that the Bears they won't throw it past 5 yards. I mean,
They don't trust him.
right? I mean, it's bad, and that can tempt defenses to come in tighter because even when the Bears are throwing, you're not going to get beat deep.
It's like, what's the point of bringing DJ Moore in for nothing? That
Right.
he got shut down, and he's a deep threat.
Also, every time Chase Claypool steps on the field, it's just like even when the Steelers lose, they win. They got rid of Chase Claypool and got the 32nd pick for him. Like Kyle Brandt tweeted out that there's a wide receiver on the Bears who is sleepwalking, and I don't even need to say who. And everyone knew. Like I didn't watch a snap of that Bears game until it was on for highlights, but I knew instantly. I was like, oh, Claypool sucks. Like
it's bad. Like he tweeted a video too. Like it's awful. You watch some of the stuff and like 0 effort.
Yeah.
He literally, I mean, his routes are lazy. You watch his blocking, which he was known for coming out of college. He was a borderline tight end guy that they were talking about. And like, he was always known for his blocking. And like, he's just like I don't know.
And
It's
it,
bad.
to me, watching that video is one thing. When I see him miss a couple blocks, it's like, all right, maybe he's a diva. Maybe he just doesn't want to block for his guys. But then to see some of like his slant routes where he's just like jogging off the line of scrimmage and not running them crisp, it's like, well, like, what are you even doing here?
Yeah.
Like, there's just no point. Do you even want the ball? Do you even want to get involved? Do you want to win the games? It just makes no sense to me.
And it may be because he was the Steelers' first pick in that draft, but like there was high hopes for him coming out. Like he had so much potential, and like it just, I don't know, it's crazy.
Well,
to
and
see
like
that
the
he fell
4
off so much.
touchdown game against Philly,
yeah.
like there was just like, all right, maybe he is Mapletron, like, but it's never really panned out.
Go back to Canada.
Yeah. Also, just a thought with the Packers. I'm sure everybody saw like that Jair Alexander interview and things like that. It's like Jair Alexander's a great corner, but like I'm starting to dislike him a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
He has gone.
I actually didn't see that interview happen.
He
He was
just
like, I didn't know what you guys expected from DJ Moore going up against me.
Ooh.
he's just like he's turning into a guy that like
He likes, like, he just
Talks like Jalen Ramsey,
He's
but
turning
plays like
it-
Jair
yeah.
Alexander.
Yeah, exactly. And he's good. Like he's I would probably put
Top
him in the
five.
top 3.
Okay.
Maybe in the 3-4 area.
I would say he's top 3.
All right, top 5 corners, top of your head. Go.
I mean, right now,
Top of your head right now.
I mean,
Corners are a tough one.
I know.
corners are a very
Just
difficult one.
top of your head.
I mean, Jalen, I'm Pat Surtain, Sauce, Jair, and
Terrell, Humphrey.
Patrick Peterson.
No. No.
I have always liked Humphrey, even though he's a Raven. I've always liked Humphrey personally.
Yeah.
So
The peanut punch is just deadly.
it's wild.
I mean, I was happy with it. I've been a Jordan Love supporter. Is anything else that you guys want to say about the
He
Packers?
was right
I mean,
about him being gunslinger.
yeah.
With those
I mean, people said that
he didn't play a bad game. Yes, like you said, his completion percentage wasn't good, but when I saw him playing, he looked calm and everything. Like I was worried, like he was gonna do like what Pickett did.
Right. If
Didn't
I
turn
had
the ball
if
over.
you
I
told me
mean-
the Packers won by like 20 or so and Love played decent, I would have been like, oh, he probably had a lot of dink and dunks and he probably had a high completion percentage, and it was actually the opposite. Which again, some people might be concerned about the completion percentage, but that just shows me how much more trust the coaches have in them that they're willing to let him throw it down the field. And that's only
I
gonna
never
improve.
minded him, but I thought he was screwed going to Green Bay because I was like, no way Rodgers is going to retire soon, because you know how he does the opposite of what everyone says. They drafted him, he's like, not taking the job from me.
Yeah.
But I'm glad for him. Like, good for you, dude, for doing that. I mean, those years weren't wasted. Those were valuable years learning behind Rodgers.
Yeah. No, I mean, Jordan Love had a great game. I think I'd like to see him when Aaron Jones doesn't have as monster of a game as he did. So I'm not doubting him, but at the same time, like I'd like to see him perform when it's all on his shoulders. I do think Aaron Jones took a lot of that, and great. I mean, if he's going to do that every week, fine. But like, I do want to see him produce when it's not 38-20,
Yeah.
right? Like when the defense doesn't get a pick
And
six at the end of the game.
The
Like,
Bears were the worst
win it.
team in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
So like, as high as I am on the Packers this year in a weak NFC, like let's see it against some actual competition. Like it's not an overreaction. I think on the power rankings they were like 30, but it's not an overreaction to say the Bears might be the worst team in the NFL. So let's like it was a
Bears fans would agree with
it was a great start to the Jordan Love era. Like,
Yeah.
but
To me, does Jordan Love look goofy as a quarterback, though?
How
does
so?
not seem
What?
he
He's like
does
tall-
not seem
like
like,
tall
a
and
quarterback.
skinny?
Yeah, he just doesn't seem like a
No, I don't
quarterback.
disagree. Looking at
I feel like he's like a receiver.
looking at the Packers next couple games, they play the Falcons and the Saints before going to the Lions, or playing the Lions at home on a Thursday game. And looking at the Lions schedule, they have the Seahawks and the Falcons both at home. So we really could be looking at a 3-0 versus 3-0 NFC North matchup, which could be fun for some Thursday night football and a couple of 3-0 teams in Lambeau.
All right. Well, we teased it earlier. Now we're going to get to our overreactions. Most of the time it's overreaction Monday. We're recording on a Tuesday. So I guess overreaction Tuesday. Let's just go rapid fire. Start with Josie, and then we'll go right down the line and we'll say whether or not we think it's an overreaction. You guys go with that?
Yep.
Sure.
All right.
Do we want to like dive into the content of it, or just say the overreaction?
Just say it.
Edit
We'll
this
all
out.
state it, and then you can go back into it.
All right, my overreaction is that Tua is an MVP candidate.
I could see it happening.
So not an
Not
overreaction.
an overreaction.
Not an overreaction.
Not an overreaction.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like maybe it's.
yeah,
I
you
think
don't
that
really have to
it's-
defend it. I mean, we
it's-
talked about it earlier.
Yeah, it's
just-
a pretty common
He's
thing right
improved
now.
his game every year, and him and McDaniel are perfect together, and he has his receivers.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people share that mindset about this overreaction right now, and I think that that's why I put it there as an overreaction. Is like it's week one. Like I think that is an overreaction, in the sense that like it's week one. Let's see what happens. He's not going to throw for 466 every week. and he's not going to throw for 3 touchdowns every week. So like, I want to see again him prove it in more than just 1 week.
I don't even know who they play next week. Do they even have a tough opponent?
It's Patriots on Sunday Night Football.
Belichick's defense. They play man, so we'll see.
And I mean, the MVP pretty much always now is the quarterback of the number 1 seed of either the AFC or the NFC team. And it's Chiefs lost, Bills lost, Jets don't look great. Like we could see the Dolphins end up being the number 1 seed of the AFC. So, and then we know Tua's going to put up numbers if he stays healthy. Like it's very feasible.
Yeah.
All right, Christian, your overreaction?
Josh Allen has the Madden curse.
I mean, I'm going to say non-overreaction again. You guys know how I feel about the Bills this year. Eli?
I'm going overreaction. I think it's too early to say that.
Josie?
That's tough because year in and year out, like I'm not a super I'm not
AB
into
with the
superstition.
Steelers and
I'm
all
not into
that.
superstition, but at the same time, like it's hard to refute what happens every single year. It's like, give it one more week and I'll maybe
One
buy it.
more week.
For right now, it's an overreaction. After next week, maybe I change my
I
mind.
think the last time there really wasn't one was it Brady as the cover or was it Gronkowski as the cover?
Well, Gronk.
Arguably didn't get the first.
Yeah, he broke his kneecap that year though.
How bad does he have to do for the curse to live on? Like, what are you thinking? Like, they don't make the playoffs. He has like an
plays
awful.
awful.
What do you mean by awful? Awful for Josh Allen or awful
He
for an
leads the
NFL
league in
quarterback?
like picks again.
Well,
was it last year?
was yesterday awful for Josh Allen or awful period? Because I would argue it's awful period.
I would say awful period. I don't think this is going to be him the rest of the season though.
I would consider the Madden curse living on if my prediction with the Bills happens, whether even if they make the playoffs, but like if there's some like turmoil where Stephon Diggs isn't there next year, either Brandon Bean or Sean McDermott aren't, because Josh Allen's going to be there and he's going to be fine. Like even if he has a terrible
I'm also
year.
thinking, like you said with Mahomes, like injury happened to him. Like Patrick Mahomes was out a couple weeks because he dislocated his knee.
Call your shot. What injury is going to
All
happen?
right,
to
let's
Josh Allen?
not do that. Christian, that was bait. He's
I
baiting
was going
you.
to say
Don't.
also, let's not gloss over the fact that like, the Jets are a legit defense. The Jets are legitimately good. And so, like, yes, Josh Allen played terribly, but I think that the Jets are also like give some credit to a good defense. So,
All right. For my overreaction, coming close. There's a Super Bowl MVP right now on the streets. He can save the Jets season. He can make everybody in the New Jersey, New York area say, Aaron Rodgers who? Super Bowl MVP, future Hall of Fame quarterback. You don't think of him in this uniform, but he's going to look good in green. Joe Flacco needs to come to the Jets to lead them to a Super Bowl. Not just kidding. But Tom Brady, they have to give him a call, right? Like at least just float it out there. Tom Brady with that team right now.
So what's the overreaction? Give Tom Brady a call?
Tom Brady is signing with the New York Jets, and he will lead them to a Super Bowl. That's the overreaction.
so is there a conflict of interest with him being a part owner of the Raiders?
He has not officially signed on with the Raiders because that has kind of been held up.
I mean, I've
Would
heard-
you guys be surprised if Tom Brady signs with the Jets?
Yeah, I think it's an overreaction. I just don't even know
Scale
if you're
of
being
one-
serious.
I mean, the fanboy of Brady and me kind of wants to see it happen just because
I'd rather Phillip Rivers come out every time.
Tom Brady, like, dude, they have 5 primetime slots left for the Jets. Like, I don't want to watch Zach Wilson play football at nighttime. I'm sorry.
You don't know if Zach Wilson's going to turn it around. He had a bad. He did
But if
play
I had the
great
choice to
season, you
watch
don't know.
Zach Wilson,
Or a
Tom Brady, I'll take the 40.
geriatric Tom Brady.
I'll take the 46-year-old. He's still got it. You telling me that Tom Brady couldn't make a run with the Jets?
I
No,
don't
he
think
could.
they
He
make
did
a
last
Super
year
Bowl.
with the Bucks. He
Yeah.
can again.
I think it's an
This seems
overreaction.
better than the Bucks team.
I think
last
it's
year.
more likely that Colt McCoy is the guy that they bring in. That's my realistic take.
That
on
is
that,
so.
like, it's bland.
Well, Colin
bland.
Kaepernick's gonna get signed. Let's be honest, but I mean, his
And
agent
nobody's allowed
called
to
him.
comment on that.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to contact our lawyers.
Should we just
see
move?
if we
Should we
can.
just move on from that? Okay, but I mean, Carson.
that out.
I think Joe Flacco is actually like a feasible option for them to bring in as a backup, just because although he doesn't have familiarity in Hackett's system, he is familiar with both Wilson and Saleh. They seem to like him. I mean, Carson Wentz is still there. Like you said, Cole McCoy. Like there's some okay. I saw that they reached out to Chad Henne.
Trade for Sean Clifford.
Remember what we
backup?
said earlier? This isn't a college
Who's
podcast.
their other guy other than Zach?
They have Tim Boyle. I
they
think
lost
who will
Mike
be promoted
White.
from the practice squad. So I think Tim Boyle will be the number
Did they
2.
bring Mike White back in?
They're not going to do an in division trade.
I mean, I think it will be like Carson Wentz. I think Wilson's going to have a decent year. I don't think anything crazy is going to happen, to be honest.
because
And,
Tim
and they'll
Boyle,
be fine. They have, like you said, they have a good team.
they were fine last year though. That's not their goals.
They went all in on this year. Like they can't, in my opinion, they can't ride it out with Wilson because they went all in on this year.
You have to do something ridiculous. Like
They keep their first rounder now because Rogers hurt. So do they
Yeah.
get another quarterback now?
So
Do
it's
they
a second
trade up
team
for
first.
Caleb Williams?
like I'm not saying like this was a success, but Miami, when Ryan Tannehill got hurt and was out for the whole season back in like July, they knew that they couldn't just sit there with Matt Moore. Not because Matt Moore is a solid quarterback, but there was just no way to run that off as, hey, we're competing for a Super Bowl this year. So they called Jay Cutler out of retirement.
I mean, do they have
So,
any
like-
guys like that are going to be going on free agency after this year? Like, is there anything crazy now that Rodgers? Let's say Rodgers is done. He's obviously done for the year. Let's say he retires. Is there anything that stops them from being next year is their year? It might suck as a fan to say
I
that,
don't
but
think
like,
they have anyone to
like-
like true that's in free agency.
I mean,
Right.
the young core of that team is going to stick around for another bit. So that's fine. The O-line's a question mark still.
They have a
But
good
defensively, you still have Sauce, Quinnen Williams.
when their defense is so
You have
like,
Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. So the core guys are still there, but I don't know.
I mean, they'll all get older. I mean, I'm
That's a
just
tough
saying. I think
blow.
it's hard to say. We said this year's the year. Like circumstances change. It sucks.
but after one week, after
No, it
three
sucks.
snaps, it was 3 snaps. It wasn't
sucks.
even a full drive before their whole entire season. Like, I don't know. I feel like you have to do something just from a PR standpoint.
Kyler Murray maybe if the Cardinals move
Yeah.
on from him.
I don't think Kyler's healthy.
Yeah,
yet.
That's
He's
the
not
only.
even gonna
But
play.
that's the only quarterback I could think
Yeah, but
of.
he won't even
Yeah.
play this
I
year.
think
If
Garrett,
they
or
move
not
on.
Garrett. I think Zach will be fine, honestly. And I know fine isn't the goal, but like you just got to change your expectations sometimes, and it sucks.
Yeah. And
He's
here's
a
the thought,
Browns
too.
fan. He's not used to having
I'm
high
down to earth.
expectations.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Here's a thought. One of the most active GMs this offseason was Omar Khan, the con artist. So maybe the Jets are interested in one of the backups, Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph. I know you're
Mason
still a
Rudolph should be
guy.
QB too. So I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
and
fine
so
with
like
that.
if one of those guys is available, the question that becomes like, are they better than Zach Wilson?
I think they would wait a few weeks for the trade, though. I can see them picking up like once this week and then see how it plays out for a few weeks and then maybe going for a trade. I think it'd be a little too early to just give up a 5th or 6th rounder to get a quarterback right away.
I mean, or Tom Brady. I mean, let's.
Yeah.
But all right. Anyways, all right. Now we're gonna preview some Week 2 matchups for you. Josie, you want to kick it away with the Bears at the Buccaneers?
Did we do Eli's overreaction?
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
Shoot.
We didn't.
just
I was
kidding. I
was
don't
sitting there. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on.
Because I was looking at
No,
that.
you're
My
good.
bad.
I don't care. It's not a big deal.
Well,
All right, ready?
Let's do it.
sorry, Luke. This is turning into a lot of edit.
All right, so my overreaction is the Giants end up with a top 5 draft pick this year because they are one of the worst 5 teams in the league.
I'm going overreaction.
I'm gonna go overreaction because I think it's more in the area of like 5 to 10. Top five is bold. I think 5 to 10 is not as overreact. So right now I'd say overreaction.
Go.
I'm gonna say overreaction, not because of the players. Like I don't have tremendous faith in the roster, but I have tremendous faith in that coaching staff. So
So I don't
They just
disagree.
improved their roster from last year too. They just kept improving.
well, last year was sort of a fluke. I mean,
Seems like it.
like let's be real. But Eli, go ahead.
No,
Continue.
I mean, I don't disagree, but like, I don't have a lot of trust in their players. And after watching the first game, I don't know if I have as much trust in Dable as I thought I did. I think that, so granted, they did play what could be one of the best defenses in the league with one of the better pass rushes in the league. So that's okay. But the O-line looked atrocious. So one thing that stood out to me just within the first quarter, they ran the ball well on the first drive. I think Saquon had a good amount of like 5, 6, even a 9-yard carry. They ran the ball well. They sustained a really good drive. And then obviously the blocked field goal for a touchdown happened. And right after that, they went into 6 straight passes. And that included 2 sacks, 3 incompletions, then the pick 6 that Saquon got blown up on that went the other way. So I understand them going away from the run later in the game. But like, I just don't get when teams do that, when they sustain the run game on the first drive. I get maybe mixing it up and throwing it on early downs, but to go 6 straight passes after that, like they're just like, all right, DJ, go do your thing. DJ did run the ball well, so maybe they were looking for ways to get him out of the pocket. And then I think on that drive after they went 6 straight passes, they won a couple runs, and then they did that like DJ sweep that just got blown up. I just didn't understand the play calling at all, which kind of made me question the coaching. The defense only had 2 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, not much pressure. And then again, with the coaching, it's like when I see a team struggle on special teams, like there's not that much difference in team. A team might have 1 or 2 special teams players that stand out, but in my opinion, special teams is on coaching. It was awful. I didn't think they had a great roster coming into the year, but kind of believed in Dable and maybe Saquon and DJ could carry them on the ground. But after this week, I'm towing the line with top 5 draft pick, and I myself, is it an overreaction? It's probably a bit of a hot take, but I can totally see it happening.
But part of me, that's not Dable's fault because Dable's not doing any of the play calling.
I'm not saying it's Dable's fault. I'm just saying it's the coaching staff's fault.
I also feel like they lost faith like right after that drive. That block field goal just killed them when they were like, we had such a good drive going. Like
I don't disagree, but then
they were whooping the Cowboys defense in that first drive.
No, I mean that first drive and then to end in 7 for the Cowboys, that sucks. Or maybe 6. I think he might have missed the extra point. But then, I just don't understand the play calling at all to go 6 straight passes after that. It's like we're just going to get blown up by their D-line.
After their first drive, they were just like, all right, we need to make sure we stay with them.
But coaches aren't thinking that when they're down 6-0 in the first. They're not thinking, all right, now how do we stay with them? Like you might think that as a fan, like, oh, this sucks. But coaches don't think that way. They're not thinking, we're down 6-0. That sucks. Like they were probably thinking, we just had a really good drive. Even myself sitting on the couch, I was like, they just had a really good drive. It sucks they just spotted the Cowboys 6 points before the Cowboys even got the ball. But just go replicate that drive again and do that a couple more times and you're fine. Maybe we haven't even seen their defense yet. I was sad.
I think there's excuses for a lot of different things that happened with the Giants, except for one thing. Like you could obviously say like, oh, the weather was really bad. The Cowboys still put up 40. They played against a really good defense. There's one thing in that game that there's zero excuse for, and it's putting up 0 points. They gave 0, a goose egg. Like you can't be in the NFL and put up 0 points. Like kick a field goal, do something. Like that's bad. Like they looked awful. They looked like one of the worst teams in the NFL in that game.
Yeah. But so with you thinking it's an overreaction, do you think they're going to turn it around somewhat soon then?
I mean, it's tough to go, in my opinion, from being a playoff team and winning a playoff game last year to being top 5 pick. Is it unbelievable? No. But at the same time, like it's week 1. Like that's what we do, overreact. But we'll see, I think, after the next couple weeks, like realistically what their floor is. Their floor might be a lot lower than we thought it was.
And honestly, part of my overreaction wasn't just with the Giants, but it was also with some of the other teams. Some other teams that I thought would be awful looked somewhat competent. The Cardinals, they hung around with the Commanders. The Colts, Anthony Richardson looked much better than I thought he would. And then the Panthers looked somewhat competent as well. So part of it is that. And then just like thinking back, it's like the NFC South isn't going to get 3 teams that are worse in the bottom 5 in the league. And same thing with the AFC South or having, 2 of the worst teams. That's just kind of tough with each other or playing each other. So part of it, again, Giants looked awful. Coaching staff, I thought, let them down. And then some other teams looked a little better than I thought they would.
Well, we went through our overreactions. We discussed week 1 games. Now we're going to actually preview some week 2 games. Josie, you want to kick it away with Bears and Buccaneers?
Let's do it. Bears and Buccaneers. Obviously, tale of 2 stories in this past weekend. Bears looked real bad. And Buccaneers looked pretty good. That's one of the things we talked about in that NFC recap that we did, or the NFC looking forward to this year. In episode 2 is that the Buccaneers, Hayden and I both talked about, like, there's no reason to panic. Like, they still have good things in place. You're going to have a Brady hangover, but at the same time, like, Baker can do some stuff. And I think that's exactly what they did. They relied on the defense to win the game, low scoring. Was it 20-16 in their game? Something like that.
Sounds right.
And so like, I think that the Buccaneers are a sneaky good team because a lot of people are out on them as far as like the Brady hangover type thing. And I think that the Bears have a lot of question marks, maybe even more. That was one of the things I talked about with the Bears, is that there are a lot of question marks this year with like Fields and that defense and stuff. Like, I think I have more questions now about them than maybe I did before the actual season started. Obviously they're playing a division opponent who owns them, right? Like that's the big thing right now with the Bears and the Packers, is since Aaron Rodgers told them that he owned them, it's like, okay, well, since Favre and Rodgers have been there, like they own the Bears. So don't overreact to them losing to the Packers, but losing in the way that they did and how poor their team performed is where I'm at right now. So like, as far as this game goes, like, could the Bears turn it around and end up winning this game? They could. It's feasible. I personally am leaning more towards the Bucs in this game to win it, with the players that they have on defense and how well they played last week. And then you've obviously got Mike Evans, who is perennial 1,000-yard receiver. You got Chris Godwin, who can play in the slot and the outside. You got K-Dot, and you've got the running game, which didn't even really get going all that much in this past game, but can. I lean more towards the Bucs in this one. I would say it's probably going to be close because any game Baker's going to win is probably going to be close and fairly low scoring. Something like a 24-21, 24-20, something like that, I think is probably how this game goes. And again, I get the nudge to the Bucs. So.
I don't know. I can see this being a game where Justin Fields has one of those classic running games. I think the Bucs really need to adjust from their game plan from week one. And I mean, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they adjust their game plan, obviously, to whoever they're playing. However, they blitzed the quarterback the second most out of any other team in the first game outside of the Vikings, ironically. And they didn't really get a lot of hurries on the quarterback. I didn't, break down their coverages or anything. I'm guessing if they blitzed 44% of the time. I'm guessing if they blitzed that much, they also played a lot of man on the back end. Maybe they had a lot of zone blitzes. But I think that they're really going to have to change that if they want to contain Justin. I think that he might be able to escape some of those and go on one of those 60, 70-yard runs. So I would lean Bears just because I can see this having a bounce back week for Fields, not just through the air, but on the ground. I think the Bears, maybe they incorporate some of their weapons a little more than they did week one, a little more successfully. Maybe limit on turnovers and force a turnover on Tua or Baker. So I like the Bears in this matchup, but it should be a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that the Bucs could start out 2-0.
2-0?
Like, who would have guessed that? But
and everybody's talking about like, trading Mike Evans because they didn't extend him and stuff. If they go into their bye week in week 5, like, what? I mean, if it's in week 5, they would have had 4 games. If they're like 2-2, 3-1, maybe like they have the Eagles right after this, so they're going to lose at least one game in this. Is like, can they justify trading Mike Evans if they have that good of a start to the season?
I mean, if I'm Todd Bowles, I'm coaching for my job. My last chance to be a head coach, I wouldn't.
Yeah. So, maybe Mike Evans is off the table for anybody targeting a wide receiver. So.
Sorry, Chiefs.
Yeah.
But, Christian, you want to talk about the Chiefs and the Jaguars?
I feel like that's probably going to be the most exciting game next week because literally the last year T-Law and the Jags stayed with the Chiefs in the playoffs. Like the Chiefs in the playoffs are usually unstoppable, and they stayed with them and almost beat them. T-Law, their offense started off a little rough, but I mean their defense played decent. I think they'll play decent against the Chiefs next week, especially if the receivers play awful again because they have a good secondary at least. T-Law, you always have faith in T-Law. At least T-Law's at least going to keep you in the game. ETN left off where he did last year, maybe even better. He's still producing. Calvin Ridley a year off. He's looking like wide receiver one already, and their receivers are nuts. Evan Ingram's the most athletic tight end out there other than Pitts, and he looked unstoppable against the Colts. I just feel like the game's going to be really fun. It's probably going to be, my guess, it'll probably be like a 28-20 game, like not very high scoring, but a little high scoring.
Who are you giving the nod to?
I'm going to give it to the Jags, actually.
To the Jags?
Yeah.
All right, so this is second week in a row you're picking an upset over Kansas City.
I think it'll be close, but I honestly, if the receivers don't play good for the Chiefs, I see Jags winning it again because they have a decent defense too, like the Lions did, and they stopped them.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards the same thing. I think that Jags win this game, and there's a little bit of panic in Kansas City. Not justifiable. I mean, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, you are a threat to anybody. But at the same time, I do think that the Chiefs, I'm leaning towards them starting 0-2. Just because the Jags, they played really well last year, and I mean they played really well in week 1 this week.
And you have a Super Bowl winning coach for the Jags too, who Peterson. He's a good mind, but I mean he's at least decent to help you keep stay in the game too.
Yeah, we're about to do our picks segment right after we're finished filming. We're gonna all kind of discuss it. It's gonna be interesting to see how many of us pick Jacksonville, because I honestly wouldn't be surprised if out of the 6 of us, a good 4 out of the 6 pick Jacksonville. But obviously we'll see when that comes out later this week. My game that I want to cover is actually Seahawks-Lions for a couple of reasons. I think that these are 2 of the more interesting teams right now. Seattle, Geno Smith played horrendous. the most memorable thing he did this weekend was be caught on film saying, "Oh my God," as Aaron Donald almost manslaughtered him. Like, the weapons are there. Kenneth Walker's healthy. Seattle's offense, we all thought was going to be the for sure thing. The defense is what we weren't sure about. Well, the defense didn't look great, but also the offense seemed to take huge steps back. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of translate. And Pete Carroll's one of those guys, kind of like Tomlin, where there's some frustrations because they fall flat when they shouldn't. But also, he always has them ready when people start to count them out. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pete Carroll kind of gets things going again. And then Detroit, we've talked about it a couple times already. They surprised the Chiefs now. They have a chance to start out 2-0. Motor City, Dan Campbell, he's ready to go. Last couple of years, these games have been incredibly high scoring. Both times the Seahawks have won, but last year, 48-45. The Seahawks won. That was kind of when we started to be like, all right, Detroit's offense is legit. Year before that, it was 51-29 Seahawks. We could see kind of like what we were just talking about with the Chargers and the Dolphins. We could see another one of those games. Jared Goff has been balling. He's about to set the record for most consecutive passes without an interception. But for all the hate that Jared Goff gets, he's doing pretty darn good even without Sean McVay. Gino,
It's like a two McDaniel thing, like him and Campbell together.
So you're saying hammer the over for all you better.
oh, yes.
Don't even know what the line is.
We're looking to introduce a gambling segment later on in the podcast, but yes, for sure. Jahmyr Gibbs, get him the ball more, especially if you're going to hopefully, it sounds weird, but the Seahawks might be able to put up more points than Kansas City could at home. You're going to need to get Jahmyr Gibbs involved. David Montgomery, stable on the ground. Sam Laporta, I mean, he's killing it also.
I did not expect
Looks
him to be
very
that
good.
good. They should.
He looked like the best tight end in the draft.
Yeah, which is crazy with how
Kincaid looked good yesterday.
Yeah, but think about that. We're talking about Sam Laporta in a draft class with Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid.
Michael Mayer, I'm high.
Like, so that's interesting. I'm score prediction. I'll probably go right. This is straight off the top of my head. I'm thinking Seattle can't turn it around at least this week. I'm going to go 34-14. Detroit gets the win and starts off 2-0.
See, I see it being closer, but I see Lions winning it.
The over-under is 47, by the way. So with that prediction...
Over.
47.
Well,
Lions
with your
could put up
prediction,
30.
it'd only be over by a point, though.
I think I'm
could
being
see-
safe on my...
I
those
could see
scores the past
34-17. Like that's I think that could also be a
45.
viable I'd say over on that person.
Does Goff throw a pick if that happens?
I mean they've got good corners there.
But so you think he doesn't get the record then?
No, I don't, but he's gonna make at least maybe one dumb mistake or someone's gonna mess up by accident. But I mean, he's gonna
Goff-
keep them in the game.
Listen, if there's anything to know about Goff is he'll come close, but he'll never win it. So
Ooh, that was
tough. And I like Goff.
Yeah, that was-
I actually like
That
Goff.
was a
That was a dig.
move right there.
Beep.
yeah. All right, Eli.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the Bengals-Ravens, mainly because of how big of a divisional game this is in the AFC North. Don't want to fall too far behind, especially for the Bengals, who would obviously have to climb a huge mountain if they started 0-2 and if they look as bad. Some stats from the first week. Burrow had a career low in completion percentage at 45%, career low in yards, and career low in passing yards per attempt. And I think they also scored 3 points, which is tied for the lowest they've ever scored when he started a game in Cincy. So really rough offensively. Look for them to turn it around. Also, to go along with that, he only had one completion with air yards over 10, and 7 of his 14 completions were within 2 air yards of the line of scrimmage. However, not the best of weather. So I have to take that into account in this game, much like a lot of games on the East Coast during this week. And then only 4 passing attempts were across the middle of the field. I think they need to utilize that more. We talked about Tyreek Hill over the middle of the field. I think using Jamar Chase over the middle of the field or using Jamar on the outside to have Higgins come across the midfield can go into some explosive plays, especially if a safety cheats over with Jamar, can kind of break it that way. As for the Ravens, they look good. Obviously, they played a not great opponent in the Texans, who could possibly or probably will be the worst team in the league this year. They didn't have Mark Andrews. Hayden talked a lot about Zay Flowers along with Josie last week. He did have 9 catches for 78 yards, I believe, on about 10 targets, which I think led the team. Lamar did fumble twice and he also threw a pick. But he did have a high completion percentage, but only about 7.7 air yards per attempt. However, can't ignore the news of J.K. Dobbins. Again, we talked about injuries earlier. Like whether you root against guys or for guys, it just sucks when a guy is bitten by the injury bug. And that's the same thing with J.K. Dobbins. I'm a Penn State fan. He was an Ohio State player. But it just sucks like when a guy just keeps going down year after year. It's like got to be so discouraging. And where do you just go from that? So the Ravens running back room, they've fortunately for them, they've dealt with this before. So they're experienced with how to replace him. Obviously they have Lamar as well. So can utilize that. But yeah, I think this will be a back and forth game. I think it will be like a 27-24, maybe 27-20. I'm going to lead the Bengals, actually. I actually think that they do have a bounce back on offense. I think they utilize the middle of the field more, and I think they're able to stop Lamar on the ground.
I agree with that, too. Yes, the Bengals, like last year, they started out slow, but they picked it up. Like, even when they start slow, they pick it up. So even if they do lose next week, I wouldn't be worried if I was a Bengals fan. Like, they're going to pick it up. Joe Burrow's still coming back from a calf injury, and those are...
I agree with that they're going to pick it up. But I honestly, if I was a Bengals fan and they do lose this week, I would be worried. But basically just because of the division record and starting off 0-2 in that division, especially whether the Browns pick up another win, then they're 2 games back and the Browns are 2-0 in the division, or the Steelers pick up the win and everybody has a division win. Just going in week 2, everybody already having a division win or being 2 games back to 2 teams in the division. It's tough when you're in a good division to come back from that.
Yeah, I think that the one thing too to talk about is the fact that like Marcus Williams' injury is I'm pretty sure he's out for the season, as they said.
Yeah.
And like they've proved in the past that they can win with signing those veteran running backs to like a 1-year type thing. Mm-hmm. But like that secondary is, there's a lot of question marks in it to start the season. And then on top of that, you lose one of the better players there. It's like, I think that them replacing him with, I think they signed Duron Harmon like earlier today. It's like, that's a big loss. Yeah. And that secondary got worse and they weren't necessarily great.
Time to grow up for Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah. Like you got Kyle Hamilton who has potential, and then you've got Marlon Humphrey, who I'm a fan of Marlon Humphrey.
They had Darby, but Darby hasn't really done anything.
And they let Marcus Peters walk. It's like at this point, like you made your bed, you got to lay in it. But like losing Marcus Williams, in my opinion, was a huge loss for them.
And then also Ronnie Stanley's going to miss some time too, it looks like. And that's a big deal in both the run and the pass game, because when healthy, he is arguably the best tackle in the league.
Yeah. Not an overreaction. The Ravens are cursed. Like the injuries that they've had on their team in the last 3 to 4 years it's mind-boggling to think about the injuries that they've had, and there's no explanation for it really. They even got a new trainer in this year.
Yeah. Credit to Harbaugh for getting through all those seasons too.
Because also last year I remember them coming out with like the report from like every team, like ABs and everything for everything, their training staff and everything, like medical stuff's like a D every year, and I was like, well,
part of that's just luck.
Yeah.
Just sucks. Mm-hmm. But even as Browns and Steelers fans, it sucks to see a team go through that. You want to beat a team when they're at their best.
It's hard for me to see JK through that because, like you said, we're Penn State fans, but I loved him in college.
Yeah,
he was so exciting.
And every time he gets on the field, he's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Big guy and he's fast. Yeah,
he was never dumb too. He always just showed it on the field, and then
When I think of J.K. Dobbins, the first thing that comes to mind though is Gus Johnson, just talking completely out of pocket.
Yeah,
are you guys familiar with that clip?
Yeah, the abortion. I don't even want to talk about it. I'm not a big fan of Gus Johnson. Not even because of that. That's a different conversation.
But all right. Well, moving on to wrap things up, we're gonna try something new. We're gonna play Weddle, and then we're actually gonna all work together and kind of do it. So Eli pulled Weddle up on the laptop. The way it's gonna work is we're all kind of guess as a team. But so whenever we get that pulled up, how do we want to start things off here, guys?
I personally always start with a middle of the range guy when it comes to numbers. And personally, on the easy mode, I always go with Alvin Kamara personally. So middle of the road with age and number.
All right, so we're gonna start. So it is a running back today. He is 5'10". He is 28. However, he is not in the NFC South, nor I think this means he's not in the NFC or in the AFC South.
He's AFC.
Lower than number 41, and obviously doesn't play for New Orleans. So we know he's AFC, not AFC South.
I already have a name in my head. I already
throw it out there.
Is he a 28-year-old that's about 5'10"?
Is it Austin Eckler?
That's what I was thinking.
Throw it out there.
Eckler.
That might have been an easy one. Look at that.
Hey!
That was quick.
All right.
All right.
Wait. So that was the easy one.
Yeah.
All right,
So the easy one is it's all offense. We're gonna go to the harder one now. This includes every single player, so it could even be like an offensive lineman, a kicker, anybody. So I think. I mean, do we
You
want
want to start off with Kamara again? Or?
I mean, unless you want to go with a guy who's number 50, like Landon Roberts. But
is that
doesn't
so
matter.
obscure though?
It might be. Watch it be him.
But if I mean, we're not trying to get it right
Yeah,
necessarily in the
yeah.
first one. All right, so we've got he is on defense
Yeah.
because we have a yellow on the linebacker, but he's not a linebacker. He is smaller than 6'1", at least, so probably only like 1 or 2 inches shorter than 6'1". His age is younger than 29. His number is lower than 50, and he is not in the AFC nor in the NFC North.
You know, the numbers doesn't really help you anymore with the new number rules.
But
so
I'm thinking
that could
like
be
maybe like
anyone.
a corner, maybe like. I mean, how tall is Parsons?
Parsons is
6'1" probably.
Yeah, I think 6'1" sounds right. So it's not him.
He's not 20.
Shorter than that makes me think it's a corner. That's the big thing with me is like I'm looking at them like corner or safety.
So a young
Yeah.
corner that's lower than number 50.
Marcus Peters.
I mean, I don't want to go
Sounds
Sauce because he
Raiders.
wears number 1. So like I'm not trying to go. They want to go who wears 25.
And they're in the NFC and not in the NFC North.
They're in the NFC North.
Not in the NFC North, but they are in the NFC.
Oh, they're in NFC.
Yeah. Does anybody have a number 25 or any DB in the 20s?
Jair.
Jair's not that old. Wait,
Is he younger than
He's
29?
like
Yeah.
27, isn't he?
Yeah.
Is he?
We could try it. But he's in the north, so
So he does play for
All right.
Green Bay. So
Oh,
obviously in the
Eric's-
NFC North,
Eric
number
Stokes.
26, older
No,
than
he's
23,
older than 20.
but he is not a cornerback, and he is taller than 5'10", so he's probably 5'11" or 6 foot.
So he
I know what it is.
Oh, Savage.
It's Russ. Isn't it Russell Douglas? Or maybe he's 6'2".
No, it's Savage.
not him.
It's Savage, the safety. He's 26.
Is he?
Hey!
That was a good call.
All right, so hopefully that recorded.
Douglas
If
is
not,
29.
then we'll see what happens.
I'm assuming we won't do that well in future weeks. If so, maybe we can introduce a different game. Obviously, the cross grid game is very popular now. So we'll play around, see if we can bring you guys some different sorts of trivia games. But this has been the Second and Short Podcast, episode 3. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hayden.
I'm Eli.
I'm Christian.
Josiah.
We're out. See you next week.